You are listening to KC Sports Network, the #1 podcast network for today's Kansas City sports fans. With former players from your favorite teams, informed perspectives, and former insiders, this is the place for you. KC Sports Network is proudly presented by Emprise Bank, your partner in possible.
Welcome into another 3-Mod Pod. I am John Kurtz, joined as always by Derek Young of K-State Online, Cole Manbeck, former beat writer from the Manhattan Mercury. We have all turned the page, or officially turning the page. No more Oklahoma, all Texas Tech. Red Raider preview here today. So we'll get Cole's deep dive on Texas Tech, our lead pipe locks of the week, everything you've come to know and love in these preview episodes, starting with the headlines in just a moment. But first, shout out to 360 Vodka from Holiday Distillery. Also, Ben Holiday Bottled and Bond Bourbon, whichever poison you prefer. Make sure you get stocked up this weekend. Home game, it's 11 a.m., 360 Vodka, perfect for some Bloody Marys out of Bill Snyder Family Stadium if you want to go tailgate before the game. Unfortunately, I will not be able to be there in Manhattan, but if you're kicking back at home, that's much easier, you know? Get a multi-TV setup, get a bunch of games going, and get your Ben Holiday Bottled and Bond Bourbon on. Another great way to do it. So, Holiday Distillery, K-State folks that have done a great job supporting our podcast, so support them as well, please. First headline for me is going to be this week the fact that everybody has to do what I just mentioned we're doing, and that is put the Oklahoma game behind you. And this goes two ways because Texas Tech just had a massive statement programming defining kind of win early on for Joey McGuire. And Chris Kleiman even said as much in his press conference that it was a statement win for Joey McGuire early on in his career. First time they've beaten Texas at home since 2008. K-State obviously has been very used to beating Oklahoma, but that still is a huge win for the program. So how likely is it, boys, that K-State is going to handle this all right after we did not see the Cats handle the Missouri win very well earlier this year?
Yeah, I think they do handle it well just because they went through it already once before this season. And I know people will be like, but it was Missouri, right? They're not exactly a flattering team to watch at this point. But then again, that was an emotional, expenditure type of game, and especially the celebration afterwards, and you're kind of basking in it. So I still think it had the same effect. And going through that, I think that with the maturity that this team supposedly has, that got tested the first time and they failed that test, I think they pass it this time. I don't see them making the same mistake twice.
Yeah, I agree, DY. I think we hit on at the very end of our last episode that because of the maturity of this football team and the fact that they've been through it before with what happened in the Tulane game following Missouri, that they won't let that happen again. I think they've reset now and they have a clear understanding that each week, any given week, you can be beat in this league, and they know Texas Tech is a rock solid opponent. And I think Texas Tech beating Texas, I'm sure, makes it much easier for Kansas State's coaches to get the attention of the players on the team as well. One of the top teams in this league that Texas Tech just defeated. So I'm sure that grabs the attention of the team. I think they're going to come in locked in, focused, ready to go and start to build off that Oklahoma win. So I'm not that concerned about that. I mean, it will be a mindset type of game and who comes out more focused. I think Texas Tech might have a little more of a difficult time doing so, just coming off the way they beat Texas in that game and then having to go on the road on top of it. I think they might lack a little less focused than K-State.
I agree. I think the recipe is there for them to be flatter than Kansas State, just because that was a win that they haven't had in a long time. Kansas, like you said, Kurtz, Kansas State's kind of used to beating Oklahoma. It's still probably the most impressive win of the Kleiman era. Don't get me wrong, but it's not. There's not a big gap between that and some of the other ones. There's a big gap between that Tech win and anything that they've had in the recent future. It was at home. They stormed the field. I think that can kind of feed into it as well because the celebration and the fan interaction and engagement's a little bit more and kind of can be conducive to a hangover. And then you got to go on the road as Cole's flag kind of.
I was going to say, this is not a good omen as we're trying to talk about if you're only listening via podcast, we're trying to talk about who is going to be primed for a letdown here as K-State tries to march toward another Big 12 title. And the flag that Cole put up behind him is the 2012 Big 12 champions flag, which is draped over his wedding photo, by the way. And Vanessa getting her revenge because as that was being said, it just started to fall, and now it's been totally ripped off. So it's back to the wedding photo. Vanessa wins, the wife wins, and K-State loses because now there is no more Big 12 championship coming.
Yeah, I guess what I was saying before I was rudely interrupted by Cole's championship banner was that, I think it's more conducive for a hangover when you haven't been through it before, probably in years, and you win the game at home around a lot more fans. You storm the field and then go on the road at 11 a.m. kickoff in Manhattan, Kansas a week later. I think that's just more of a recipe for disaster from the Red Raiders standpoint.
And Tech spent like the last 24 hours, like, it was heated on Texas Tech and Texas Twitter, going back and forth with each other about everything that happened on the field. There was the video of a fan, like a kid shoving a player. Then there was a counter video that at first appeared to show like a Texas player shoving a fan, but then it came out that it was actually the Texas player had been shoved by another fan into a fan. And then the fine came out. So it's just the Twitter battle between those two has seemed like kind of a mess. Which I don't know how much the players actually get into that, but there's been a lot of drama. There's been more lingering effects, I think, from the Texas Tech game. Although I will point out, Derek, you said this at the press conference the other day, like Adrian Martinez has been doing a lot of extra media, right? Now I know he's experienced vet. He's been around for a long time, but he's never had a game like this where he's been the center of attention nationally. And so that is something else he'll have to deal with now is like, hey, everybody's been telling him he's really awesome for the last 48 hours. Can you put that behind you?
Yeah, that's going to be a task. I will say this, K-State, not nearly the sideshow that's going on between Texas and Texas Tech, but we're still, hearing stuff about the obnoxious light show that was going on during third downs that were kind of annoying. So there's still conversations about that a little bit. And the male cheerleader that apparently really wanted to taunt Adrian Martinez.
John, do you remember was it the Quincy Morgan touchdown against Nebraska in 2000 when you could see Nebraska's yell leader screaming at Quincy Morgan when he took the go-ahead lead to go up 29-28? It reminded me of that. Apparently these yell leaders just love to get in the face of players. It seems like a really smart thing.
Well, also they do it after key plays that have gone against their team. I don't understand that. I mean, that was Quincy Morgan scored like the game clinching touchdown in that one. Now, in fairness, as he was running his route and it was snowing in the end zone, he kind of like slipped into them. So he was actually like right up against them. Not the case for this gentleman in Norman. Although just not a great day for gentlemen in Norman in general, because that hype video that got put out, which was just excellent by K-State after the fact, by the way, had the guy, let me just see if I can recreate, pretend this is one of those aluminum, it actually looked like Mick Ultra, which I would have thought, maybe Keystone or Natty Light, something like that. Bush Light. Yeah, Bush Light. I feel like that's
well, guys, I already got people in my tweets earlier this year when I made a shot at Bush Light and Missouri fans, and we don't want to offend any of our beer drinking listeners and their brand.
Bush Light is next week. Bush Light is next week. That is what Iowa State drinks. That is what believe me. There's going to be a lot of bullets in the chamber about Bush Light next week, all right? But for now, it's like a Mick Ultra, aluminum can here, and the guys, well, boys, Lincoln ain't here anymore. He ain't here to just give up. And then just cutting it straight to a 21 Savage song and Adrian Martinez walking out of the locker room.
But did you hear the very end of it when he says, we're back? At the very end? Yeah, at the very end, it shouts, we're back. It's gold. What do you think?
By the way, I hope the players have moved on from Oklahoma better than we have because we're already.
Look, I just think about that guy like catching a stray in K-State social media hype video, like waking up that next morning and like,
all of his family and friends are texting him. Yeah.
But I mean, just the thought process of K-State social media team to get all of that content and then actually be able to utilize it because of a win just makes it all the better. It was one of the best videos. I've watched it 4 times this morning, guys. KT Leviston gets me going. Like I wake up every morning and I scream, I don't like being doubted.
I do like Nate Matlack's look at that guy too.
Yeah, Nate Matlack's look is also great. Like just everything about it was amazing. Everything about it was amazing. I'm here for more behind the scenes content like that, please. I mean, even Malik Knowles going by and say, "Walk into your trap, take over your trap." Like I love that. And then Felix with the wink. Felix, I feel like actively practices his glares. We can. We can say that, right? Like he was doing it when he was in the stands, when he hopped up in the stands and he saw people like running up to take pictures too. Like I feel like he.
Well, remember the 6-sack game and all the poses? Like he does great for the camera.
Oh, he knows what he's doing. Yes, he knows what he's doing. Absolutely. Where were we at? What was that? Can this team put Oklahoma behind? That was the topic, right? Can this team put the Oklahoma?
That's our fault. Yeah.
Well, we can't, but hopefully they can.
Yeah. Well, Texas Tech's the same situation. All right. On that subject, what about Adrian Martinez? Is this because I've done a couple radio interviews. I was on SiriusXM's Big 12 channel yesterday, and they asked me, like, is this how confident should we be that this is a catalyst game for Adrian Martinez and not just a one-off, not just the one time that he really rises up and plays like that? And I thought, well, it's a fair point to ask. I mean, the way the game happened, that was absolutely the best case scenario, having Adrian play like that, hoping that that'll be what unlocks his confidence and allows him to continue doing that the rest of the year. But then you have some, like I've seen this is Big Game Boomer, so, take that with a grain of salt. But I saw his takeaways from the week. He was like, K-State owns Oklahoma, but they'll finish 7-5 because Adrian Martinez is up and down. And my initial reaction was to be like, hey, man, like he got it figured out, obviously, in that game. But then I was like, well, I mean, if you look at his season in totality and you're somebody neutral looking at it, I think you would say, yeah, it's been an up and down season for Adrian Martinez. So does that continue, or is this good? It's fixed. Everything's good.
I don't think we know. I mean, I think it's just that simple. I don't think we know. The challenge for him is to I think we all realize he's not going to rattle off 400 yards and 5 touchdowns every week. I think that's a little bit unrealistic of an expectation, but playing well with the mindset that he did, that has to be the mentality week in and week out. But we don't know if we're going to see that kind of consistency. I will feel, if he does it again this week against Texas Tech, I almost forgot the opponent. Oh, geez, I'm terrible. I hope this is not a sign of things to come. If he does it this week against Texas Tech, I will probably be very confident that this is the Adrian that we're getting.
Yeah, I would like to see it just one more week here to feel much better about it. But I feel pretty good that Adrian's turned over a new leaf, because I really feel like it was all mental with him. And now that he's actually put a performance like that together, I think he's unlocked that, and that's no longer in his head, and he's going to just continue to cut it loose. Now, the one question that could come and arise is when he does have that first turnover, right, which he does not have a turnover yet through 4 games. If he makes a bad decision or a mistake, does that get in his head? Yeah, maybe he'll just go all year without one. That'd be great. But, it's all likely that it's going to happen, obviously. And so you got to wonder about his mindset when that does occur. Hopefully he can play through it. I think the coaches got through to him, feel good about where he's at. He was just so dynamic and special in that game. And one of the things DY had alluded to last week is when we were talking about Adrian unlocking and having a special performance potentially was, do we think he can actually do it? Well, DY had mentioned he's done it before. The talent was there. Like we've seen him do this, and it just was a matter of getting things unlocked mentally for him. And he did that. And I've rewatched the game now 3 times, not to go back to Oklahoma, but just like all the different looks that Oklahoma and Venables gave Adrian and how special he really was in the pocket. We talked about navigating the pocket, but his ability to sense pressure when it was coming to and never get sacked in that game was really incredible. Venables brought a 5-man rush or more, or 6 guys, on 21 of the 39 drop back attempts in that game. And he was bringing cornerback blitzes, dropping the D end into coverage, dropping a D tackle into zone, and then bringing a safety or linebackers. He brought a ton of different stunts and looks, and K-State's offensive line picked it up often. And the times they didn't, Adrian sensed it. And in those 5-man or 6-man pressures, he went 12 of 19 passing for 120 yards and also scrambled for 62 yards. So just another highlight how incredible he really was in that game. And I think moving forward, he's going to be fine.
One thing that stands out to me, and I can't remember, I may have said this on the pod on Monday. I have said it a couple times, a couple times now, and I can't remember who I said it to and who I didn't. But when I was rewatching the game and the sideline interview came on with Adrian after the fact, he talked about like the culture at K-State. And I think a lot of people like gravitated toward him saying like, oh, we're building something special here. But what stood out to me about the answer was it was basically the question was like, how were you able to turn this around? And he just said, the culture here is different. And I thought, well, that's something that gives me a lot of hope and legitimate optimism that this is going to be a permanent thing, that he's turned it on, because I took that to be like, hey, man, at Nebraska, it was a pretty toxic environment. Like, especially the last couple of years, fans are already really frustrated. Things are not going well. He's the lightning rod for criticism. Obviously, his head coach is, I almost just said something I shouldn't say. He's not the greatest guy to be handling those situations. Mr. Like, I'm going to throw my offensive coordinator under the bus after the first game of the year this year. I'm going to complain about my guys wearing hoodies out there on the field. Like, not exactly the players coach kind of guy that's going to love you up like Chris Kleiman is. And we've heard so much about the culture here with this team this year. I just think clearly there's a much better environment here to foster like loving up Adrian Martinez, as opposed to letting him just get eaten alive like he was before, or feel an immense amount of pressure. So I feel like the situation here is much more conducive to this being permanent than it would have been at Nebraska.
Yeah, I mean, Chris Kleiman will love him up to a fault.
Yeah.
Really, at that point. I'll say this, though. If the culture is what they say the culture is, you come back and you beat Texas Tech.
For sure. Absolutely. Final headline here, offensive line injuries starting to get pretty concerning, unfortunately. Andrew Langang out indefinitely with a medical issue that Chris Kleiman said requires further testing. You've already got Taylor Portier out for the year. I know DYU said Hadley Panzer's a little bit banged up. Like they just are dealing with a lot. Plus you've had some guys going in and out between KT Leviston and Cooper Beebe a little bit each of the last couple of games. Where are we at on this? I don't love hearing that about Langang after the Portier news.
Yeah, I mean, they got their 5, the ones that started against Oklahoma, that being I don't know why I'm drawing blank. Leviston, BB, Gillum, Panzer, and Duffy. You got those 5, but you're running out of guys that you anticipated playing this year. You really are. Dawson Delforge and Carver Willis are the next interior and tackles probably on the depth chart at this point. Although if something were to happen to a tackle, they probably kick BB back out and don't immediately go to Willis. Chris Kleiman indicated that. Look, and people can complain a little bit about the depth, but I don't think that would be accurate. Any team that loses 2-3 offensive linemen that they want to count on is going to be hamstrung to an extent, and Kansas State is. And despite all that adversity, they still haven't allowed a sack since week 1.
Yeah, certainly hope they can get Langang back, and this isn't something that's going to be long-term because he's their most versatile offensive lineman. Well, I shouldn't say that Cooper Beebe is their most versatile guy, but Andrew Langang's right behind him with the ability to play guard and tackle and has a promising future. So hopefully this is nothing long-term. Kansas State kind of needs the bye week to get here soon. They've got 2 more games, Texas Tech and Iowa State, and then hopefully they can get some guys that are dinged up back to 100%.
DY, do you have anything else you can offer on the Langang situation?
I mean, it's medical, but I don't think it's injury related. I think they don't know what they're dealing with yet, so that's why there's no timetable.
You know, I almost, you guys were talking about this in the group chat, and I went back and listened to Chris Kleiman actually saying it. The way he kind of left it, he was like, is there like an outside chance he could be available this week? Like they get good news and then everything's
I mean, anything is on the table. I think they just literally they're just checking off a lot of boxes to make sure nothing, they're not endangering anything. But I think they just, they don't know what they're dealing with yet. They're waiting on test results to come back, taking further tests. I think they're being very precautionary with whatever it is that he's dealing with.
Okay. Well, we have talked a lot of offense here. We have not talked a bunch about the defense. It was interesting listening to Chris Kleiman's thoughts about the defense. Said they weren't great throughout, but they stood tall and were great in certain situations, a la the bend but don't break style, really, that they played against Oklahoma. One guy that we've seen making plays all year and probably hasn't gotten enough run on this podcast is a man who lives up to his name. That is Kobe Savage. And DY had a chance to catch up with him in our DY Sunday conversation. Our DY 3-mod conversation coming up here with Kobe Savage.
Derek Young with the 3-Mall podcast with the 3-Mall conversation of the week. Kansas State just got off the win against Oklahoma. Texas Tech this week. I'm here with safety Kobe Savage. This is your first year in Manhattan. Just how would you take it all in so far, and how would you describe your experience?
It's been a roller coaster. I mean, when I first got here, it was snowing. I was never used to nothing like that, but I've enjoyed it a lot. The people here are really nice. I just enjoy the atmosphere. Feels like everybody's one big family. The team has brought me in. Just different experiences. I really love it here. I enjoy the football, the coaches, and all our support staff.
You've been described as probably the biggest football junkie on this team. I think you've even told us before in previous media sessions that you've slept here in Veneer before. What kind of goes into that? I know I've spoke to your father. I think that's almost a family thing too.
Oh, yes, sir. Ever since I was in high school, I just love watching film. Just love watching guys move around, just see different techniques and mannerisms that they have that maybe I could steal or copy or just use within my game to help me be better. So just watching different other players, such as like NFL players, maybe even some high school guys that I could steal from. It just helps my game a lot.
Is there any NFL guys that you do model your game after?
I'd say I like Ed Reed, Buda Baker. I love Minka Fitzpatrick, and I really like Jalen Petrie.
Those are pretty good examples. First year of Power 5 football, you came here from the JUCO life. I imagine that's a pretty stark contrast between the two. But that win against Oklahoma on Saturday and the celebration afterwards, the jubilation in the locker room, I imagine that's why you came to Kansas State.
Oh, definitely. I already knew whenever I got here that playing Oklahoma and all these other big Power 5 schools was a big deal to Kansas State, and winning those games is very important. And I knew that coming from the JUCO level, I had to bring with it my A game every single game. But yeah, whenever we got back to the locker room, it was a great celebration. Coach Kleiman was jumping around, dancing. It was amazing. I never experienced anything like that.
When the team comes back from road games like that, even if it's 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning which was the case on Saturday, you get greeted when you come back to Veneer, and you kind of have like a homecoming of sorts with the band, and even a bunch of fans come to that. That was the first time you saw that. What did that mean to you?
It meant the world, just knowing that you got a fan base that's willing to stay up to 3 a.m. to come and support you and cheer you on. It was really a nice experience, and thank you to the band and their director for all that. I really enjoyed that a lot.
One of the things you said early on in the year to me, and when we spoke in another media session, is that you treat everyone like Alabama. Obviously, that didn't necessarily work the last time, after the Missouri win, which is another emotional high for you guys, and you lost the following week to Tulane. Is that a learning experience from this time where you guys, another emotional high when you defeat Oklahoma? Next week, you got to, recalibrate for Texas Tech?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it's a completely new week. Oklahoma is out the picture. Texas Tech is who our main focus is. We're not going to get too high or stay too low. We're just going to stay level-headed, neutral thinking like Ben Newman tells us all the time. And we're just going to go into this game just thinking we're the underdogs and that we got something to prove again.
Chris Kleiman called it 12 one-week seasons. Has the team bought into that mindset at this point?
Oh, yes, sir, definitely, especially after the win against Oklahoma. He was telling us, the fans are going to be with us when we win or sometimes maybe against us when we lose. So it's a one-week season. Every game is going to matter the most to us about our season.
Oklahoma and Texas Tech. Offenses I don't think are identical, but is there enough crossover where you can use some of that experience against the Sooners and apply it towards the Red Raiders?
Oh, for sure, especially in the run game, because I feel like most of the teams in the Big 12 run a lot of crunch or quarterback draw because we have a lot of experienced backs and talented quarterbacks. So, yeah, especially in the run game, we could definitely use some of the stuff that we used against Oklahoma, against Texas Tech.
Against Oklahoma, you guys give up 34 points, probably more than you would like. But did you still feel it was a solid performance because of the way you guys were able to get off the field on 3rd and 4th down?
Yeah, so I do believe we dominated in 3rd and 4th down, and we limited some explosive plays, but I still think we got some room to fix, like our little zone coverages and some man concepts and just tiny things that we could have fixed to lower that deficit.
Some of those explosive plays that the Oklahoma was able to produce against you guys, and you obviously don't have to provide me with the details. I don't want the nuclear codes and Texas Tech listening to this, but was it more of a busted coverage type of situation or kind of losing some of those battles?
It was definitely busted coverage. Our one-on-ones, I pick anybody on my team over anybody from Oklahoma, definitely. But, yeah, it was just busted coverage. It's just tiny little things like that.
You got some of your teammates starting to get some buzz, from the NFL, such as Julius Brents, Felix Anudike-Uzomah. Their names are starting to circulate a little bit more. What is it like playing against those two guys? And did you, the first day you stepped on foot on campus, and started playing alongside them, was it one of those situations where those are definitely, future pros?
The thing is, it's so crazy just being on a team with them, guys like that, Deuce Vaughn, Adrian, Phillip, Malik, all those guys, because they're just normal guys at practice who just compete. They work hard in every drill and everything they do. So, I mean, you always know, like, oh, yeah, those are definitely, like, NFL-type guys. But it's so crazy. But I'm really happy for them that they're getting their buzz that they deserve. They all deserve that. And we're going to have a great season with those guys.
Yeah, they're a lot more humble in that way.
For sure.
Adrian probably wasn't at his best the first 3 games, hadn't turned it loose yet, but he really seemed to just like put that all behind him and unleash, so to speak, on Oklahoma. I know you guys all love him. He's a captain, and no one ever lost faith in him. But just how happy was the team for him on an individual level?
We were really happy, especially whenever he got his hammer after the game. We all hugged him, showed him a lot of love. He deserves it at the end of the day. He worked his butt off. He didn't listen to anything that Twitter was saying or all the fans or other people that were doubting him. Like, none of us did. We all believed in him. Coach Kleinman, everyone believed in him. And he's a great quarterback, so I'm glad we have him.
At one point in the offseason, and I think it was a fair question, the safeties were called the question mark for this defense because we didn't know a whole lot of the guys that were going to play, namely you and Drake Cheatham. And but even though they did have some returners like TJ Smith, Sincere Mason, you have risen kind of to the top of that room and played the most snaps of anyone. I think you're playing almost every snap. But just how much did it mean to your defense to have the quality snaps that you got from guys like TJ Smith and Drake Cheatham last Saturday, especially when someone like Sincere Mason's kind of limited at this point?
Oh, it means a lot. Just having that depth in the safety room and knowing that if I come out and TJ goes in, like, there's not going to be any type of drop-off, or Sincere goes in for Drake, there's no drop-off at all. So just having those guys with experience and knowledge of the game and who really love the game, it's really helpful to our defense and critical.
QB run game with Donovan Smith a little bit. He's a little multifaceted in that way. Is that the threat this week that he can beat you with the legs?
I've seen him on film. He looks pretty fast, but I'm very confident in our linebackers and D-line that they'll just get that crushed and we'll destroy the run game, and it'll just be an air raid for the most part.
Last question. What's it like playing for Coach Kleinerman? I know he says that you're someone that's just always in his office, so I imagine the two of you are pretty close at this point.
It's really good. I have a close relationship with Coach Kleinerman, and it really stems off the fact that he flew all the way to Texas just to come to my JUCO and watch me work out and watch film with me and talk ball with me. I knew he was going to be my coach after the recruiting process. I really didn't even need to take a visit up here, but he's a great guy. My mom and his wife are really close, and I'm really close with his sons. And it's just he's a great coach, and he believes in all of us. So I love that we have a relationship like the one we have.
All right, thanks. That's Kobe Savage. I'm Derek Young. It's a 3-mile conversation of the week.
All right, there's Kobe Savage. Appreciate him taking some time with Derek earlier this week to chat, break down where he is at on the defensive side of the ball. Certainly a fun guy to watch. Certainly a very fun guy to watch right now on this defense, and definitely will hit you. He will absolutely hit you. Texas Tech, I know Cole has done exhaustive research on the Red Raiders here, and I know that because about 10 o'clock last night, I'm sitting, on my couch, just chilling, winding down, and I get a text from Cole's wife. And it's not only a text from Cole's wife, it's a text from Cole's wife in bed. And what it was a picture of Cole in his own bed, presumably with his wife there. And Cole has a notebook full of notes scribbled everywhere and is like staring into a phone. And the caption of the text just said, Cole in stat mode, like this is where the magic happens. So Cole, I know you've been hard at work doing research on Texas Tech. I just wanted to let the people know how dedicated you are to this cause.
I'm sure the people were a little nervous where that story was going, our listeners, in the first 30 seconds there as you were teeing that up.
It's called telling a good story, Cole.
It was a good story. I was went up there. She was making fun of some of my note taking and stats and numbers, and she didn't want me up there doing that, but I decided to take it up to the bedroom last night and do my stat magic. So, anyways, well, we're off the rails again. Let's get on track with the Red Raiders. We can't let this happen again because we know what happened. We went off the rails before Tulane. Let's focus in, guys. Let's take the Red Raiders seriously here. John, you want to? I guess I can just jump right in and talk about Texas Tech. I mean,
you want. Well, I can give you a synopsis, but I'm going to tell you pretty much the same thing I said the other day.
Yeah, I mean, look.
Here's something, Cole. Let me see if you agree with this. Someone else in the league that covers a different team in the league that was DMing me earlier this week said that Joey McGuire, they are calling him Barry Switzer Jr. because he has like that kind of bravado and swagger to him. So that attitude does seem to be, seeping through a little bit to this team. How do we feel about Joey McGuire as Barry Switzer Jr.?
It seems like maybe an optimistic stretch at this point. I don't know enough about Joey.
I don't think it meant success.
Personality, I got you. Yeah, I think he's a guy that the personality really rubs off on his team and permeates confidence in his team. So I do think that I think he's going to work out there. I think he's going to be a good hire that they made. But this is a matchup that Kansas State has kind of owned, John. I mean, Kansas State's won 10 of the last 11 games dating back to 2011. But look, they're 3-1. We all know the record. We know what happened. They lost at NC State, a top 15 team in the country. They lost on the road 27-14. They were expected to lose that game. They were 10-point underdogs. The Houston game, they probably should have lost. They tried to give it away, and now we see what Houston looks like. Probably not a very good football team. So the Texas game is really what you point to. And that was a game they were down 31-17 and found a way to come back, get it to overtime and win that game. And it's a huge win for them, but I don't know what to make of them yet. You think about Texas Tech, you think air raid offense, right? And that's what they're doing. They're throwing the ball like crazy, but they're actually only scoring they have 2.05 points per drive. That's last in the Big 12. Which really caught me off guard when I was looking at the numbers that they're last in the Big 12 in points per drive. They're not running the ball well. I guess I shouldn't say that. What's interesting is Sir Roderick Thompson, who I'd completely forgotten was still on the team, has over 2,000 yards in his career. He's only ran for 168 yards this year. Taj Brooks has run for 169. Those guys are averaging over 4 yards per carry. But Donovan Smith, the 6'5", 230-pound quarterback that replaced Tyler Shuck due to injury earlier, has been sacked 13 times. Only, I think, 6 or 7 teams in America have given up more sacks per game than Texas Tech. And when I think of Texas Tech, I think about getting the ball out in a hurry, right? Not allowing a lot of sacks, getting it out in space and short yardage. The other thing is the passing game. It's a lot of short, intermediate routes, a lot of quick pass attempts that they're getting out there in space because they're only I think they've got 5.9 yards or 6.2 yards per pass, which is 105th in the country. So they're throwing the ball a ton. Zach Kittley's their offensive coordinator. He's 31 years old. He's a native of Lubbock, coached under Cliff Kingsbury from 2013 to 2017, came from Houston Baptist to Western Kentucky to Texas Tech. And if any of you know the story of Western Kentucky last year, Bailey Zappi was their quarterback. He was the quarterback coach or coached by Kittley. And Zappi set the FBS record for passing yards in a single season with nearly 6,000 yards, as well as the passing record for touchdowns in a season with 62, breaking Joe Burrow's record that he had at LSU. So they're going to throw it a ton. They averaged 434 yards per passing game, leading the country last year at Western Kentucky. So that's kind of Kittley's MO. They're going to chuck it all over the field, but they've had games where they turn it over a lot, and that's why they're in the hundreds in turnover margin.
You throw it that much, you can tend to be a little turnover happy. What's hurt Donovan Smith is all his interceptions been pick sixes.
Yeah,
and come back for scores. That's really hurt them. You said Zach Kittley's age, and it kind of made me think we get two of the youngest offensive coordinators in college football playing. Against each other.
Yeah, I certainly do. And I mean, look, that's really kind of been the MO of Donovan Smith. He's been either terrific or he's just had an awful game. And you think about the game against Texas, he was really good, 331 yards, I think 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. But the NC State game, he had multiple picks. The Houston game, he had multiple interceptions. But you look at last year, he went 15-23 for 262 yards, 2 touchdowns, and no interceptions on the road at Baylor. We know how good that Baylor defense was. And then the Iowa State game, he lit Iowa State up in that upset victory that Texas Tech had in Lubbock in that game as well. And also played really well in the bowl against a Mississippi State defense that was top 30 in the country last year. So he's shown flashes of being really good, but he's also, has some games where he's turnover prone, like DY had mentioned. And, I think that's where Kansas State's defense, if they can get some pressure on him, they can force him into some mistakes. And he also takes a lot of sacks. Now, what I will say is, the last couple of games for Kansas State, they haven't had much of a pass rush. They haven't gotten after the quarterback. And when you look at the numbers, K-State only has a 4% sack rate right now, which ranks right around 100th in the country. So it's a little bit surprising they're not able to generate more pressure, but they haven't had Nate Matlack.
They've been batting some balls down. That like 3 of those against Oklahoma.
It's more about not getting home and in the offenses that they are facing, which are similar to Tech, where you're getting the ball out quick before a pass rush is even there, which is surprising that Tech gives up. The Dalvin Smith's taking a lot of sacks. If they're really in the short passing game at like 4 or 5 yards per completion, the sack rate doesn't really make sense.
Yeah, they're giving up a 7% sack rate, which is 86th in the country. Yeah, and they're 112th in yards per completion at 9.9 per completion. So there's not a ton of explosives in what they're doing. Like every number indicates that they're getting the ball out quick, but yet he's taken 3.25 sacks per game, which is, one of the worst numbers in college football. So it is a bit of a surprise. But teams don't really have to honor the run. They're not running the ball a lot. And at Western Kentucky, they passed the ball, I think 81% of their offensive plays, which was top 3 in the country. So they're going to air it out. They're throwing the ball 75% of their plays right now at Texas Tech. So teams can kind of pin their ears back. And on the pass rush point that I made, to be fair, Nate Matlack really hasn't played the last 2 games opposite of Felix. So they've been missing him. And I also don't think Kansas State's bringing a ton of pressure. I'd have to look back at it, but I feel like there's been a lot of 3-man dropping 8.
You can't really they couldn't really against Oklahoma. For the Tech thing too, it's either that people aren't honoring or teams aren't honoring the Texas Tech run game, which is, makes sense, or the receivers aren't getting open.
Well, the other thing to remember too about Tech is they're going to go for it on 4th down a lot. They did 8 times against Texas. Now, I guess maybe Joey McGuire doesn't feel like this is quite the sense of urgency game that Texas was, but I would imagine you're going to see a pretty aggressive strategy out there. So a lot of times you're going to be playing an extra down there out there for the defense. So if they want to be bend but don't break again, I mean, there's going to be an opportunity, I would imagine, there. If you can be good in 3rd and 4th down in short yardage situations, you could be all right. And maybe we get some more rock the baby. How does Felix do it? It's like that, this kind of thing. Maybe we'll get some.
You got to hold the baby.
Okay, I guess, yeah. Well, this is why I'm 33 and single, all right? I don't know much about holding babies, okay? So you got to be easy with me there. Hopefully we'll get some of those from Felix. Do you have anything else, Cole, that we're missing on Texas Tech? Defensively, we haven't really talked about the defense, I guess.
Well, the defense has kind of been the storyline where they've made
a lot better.
Yeah, meaningful improvement. I mean, they're giving up 2.03 points per drive, which is 58th in the country. They only allowed 3 yards per carry versus Houston. They allowed 3 yards per rush against NC State as well. Really actually bottled up NC State's offense. It was the turnovers that hurt Texas Tech in that game. Texas Tech outgained them, held NC State to below 300 yards of total offense. So the run defense has actually been pretty solid. They're giving up 3.7 yards per rush against their 3 FBS opponents, which is 50th in the country. 5.5 yards per play, 64th in the country, 5.1% sack rate, 78th. I mean, look, it's all relative. Those are still meaningful improvements for Texas Tech when you consider where they were as a defense. 12.5 yards per completion, 86. They're 65th in pass efficiency D, and 6.8 tackles per loss per game, which is tied for 29th in the country. Actually, K-State's also defense is at 6.8 tackles for loss per game. The storyline is Tim DeRuyter came in as the defensive coordinator under Joey McGuire. Joey McGuire is also a defensive-minded coach. So that's led to some of the turnaround. Now, DeRuyter came from Oregon. He was the defensive coordinator there last year. They were not good at Oregon last year, 85th in the country in points per drive, but he was at Cal right before that. One of the years when he was at Cal as the DC, they were 9th in the country in points per drive. So look, he's a quality football coach. He's a quality defensive mind, and I think he's instilled some toughness and physicality in that defense, and they're certainly playing better. So it's not like the Texas Tech defenses of old where Kansas State's just going to be able to line up probably and run it right down their throats. I mean, Texas with Bijan Robinson, Bijan was fine, but 16 carries, 103 yards. They averaged 5 yards per carry. It wasn't anything like 7-8 yards per carry in that game. So they've been respectable against the run.
I'll say this about Texas Tech too. When we say, K-State has dominated the series recently, which they have. Last 2 years, it's been by the skin of their teeth, right? It was 25-24, I believe, awkward score last year with that game and the safety mixed in there. And then in 2020, that was the have to throw a pass to Deuce Vaughn, like a little angle route to Deuce Vaughn to get the game-winning touchdown late, right? So they've been very close games that K-State has played with Tech here recently. Our creative names continue. Quick hitters this week. I'm going to start you out with this. More likely outcome the rest of the way. Oklahoma wins out or Oklahoma loses multiple games the rest of the season. Which is more likely for the Sooners?
Lose multiple games in this league. Winning out is almost impossible, I think.
Yeah, I'm going to take losing multiple games as well, John. I need to look at their schedule again. I know they got TCU this weekend, which
honestly, if they could lose that.
I still think Oklahoma's probably the best team. If you backed me in a corner and made me pick one, but I still think, yeah.
Well, in the Texas game, always kind of feels like a coin flip, especially the way they played each other. So that feels like a coin flip type game on a neutral field. So I'll take multiple losses, and I'll be really interested to see what they do against TCU. And to be honest, if you're a Kansas State fan, at least for me, I want Oklahoma to win. I don't want the narrative to shift this early that, it's because Oklahoma wasn't a very good team.
Yeah, I agree.
So we don't need that coming into the picture. Plus you already have, one of the big things about last weekend was Texas and Oklahoma losing is they're both 0-1 now in the Big 12, and those are thought to be two of the primary contenders for getting to Arlington. So it's meaningful for Kansas State to be 1-0 out of the gate.
Yeah, I mean, look, I have to take multiple losses. That's what I've been on this whole year, that Oklahoma was like a 9-3 kind of a team. So I will definitely join you guys with that too. Although, yes, I would prefer that it waits until later on in the season. K-State is ranked. Shout out to the AP Top 25 for keeping the Cats in, keeping the Jayhawks out. I've always said I'm an AP man. I follow the AP poll to a T, and so I'm glad to have that vindicated this week by the Cats.
AP style there.
Yeah, AP style. I write AP style. I mean, anything Associated Press, I am all about it. In fact, DY, if you could get an Associated Press helmet mixed into your helmet,
I
really appreciate that. But K-State has been ranked in each one of Chris Kleiman's 4 seasons now. They just have not stayed in the polls for very long. So how many weeks will K-State be ranked this year in total? Not consecutively here, but in total, how many weeks will K-State be ranked this year?
I got to think about it. So Cole, go. I didn't read the outline. I didn't know the question.
Yeah, well, while you're thinking about that, DY, let me pitch a question to John. John, has Kansas State lost each of the ensuing weeks after getting ranked? All 3 years, the previous 3, or in 2020, I feel like they might have maybe won an additional game because they started 4-1.
Yeah,
right?
2020 probably not, because it was Oklahoma, then you backed it up with Tech, and then you backed it up winning at TCU, and that was when Will Howard was still playing quarterback. So they won a couple of games after that.
Yeah, I think 2019 and 2021 they got ranked after 3-0 non-con starts, right? Snuck into the top 25, and then went to Oklahoma State both those years and lost those games. So. Look, yeah, you need to stay in the top 25. You need to build some momentum on that and capitalize on it and stay relevant. We talked about that last week, and being relevant in the college football picture for the longer term. And so to answer your question, I think this is a team that can get to Arlington. So I'm going to say, how many weeks do we have left in the 8 or 9? 9 with the bye. Okay. I'm going to say 8 weeks.
Wow.
Actually, no. I'm going to say 8, because there's a chance they lose to Iowa State and they drop out. I think they're going to beat Tech.
Cole, I'm really going to need you to get on board next week with Iowa State. Really going to need you to get on board for that game.
Okay. Well, I'll try my best. Just pretty nervous about that one.
I can see.
Oh, how could you be nervous? They are 20.5-point underdogs to Kansas tomorrow.
Oh, yeah, I did see that. Yeah.
I see what you're going with there.
I was like, I'm not getting the reference here. DY, come on.
I got it. I got it.
It took me a second. Look, I have them. I think they beat Tech, Iowa State, and TCU 6-1, and I think they could lose to Oklahoma State 6-2. But you would probably still remain ranked at that point.
Oh, they would stay in. Yeah, they would stay in if that's the scenario, because Oklahoma State's ranked top 10. I mean, if they got to 6-1, K-State's going to be in the top 15.
Yeah,
sure.
So I think they stay at that point. Beat Texas. Then if they lose to Baylor, it would put them 7-3. They probably still stay in. So probably the rest of the year.
I mean, look, I want to be as optimistic as you guys. I'm trying to think if they can get through the next 2. Maybe even if you stumble in Fort Worth, you've probably built yourself up to
I
like
did have them
18.
losing at Fort Worth in my prediction before the season.
I don't know. Let me just blindly throw a dart and say 6. All that, which is basically means is like $1 you. I'll $1. The price is right. Which program wins more games over the next 5 years, K-State or Texas Tech? Both K-State and Texas Tech had their big wins last week. They're both recruiting at a higher clip right now. Texas Tech has the 24th ranked class in 2023. K-State, obviously, with Avery Johnson, has seen an uptick in recruiting here and what they're doing in the state of Kansas. Still might land Joseph Randall, still might land Josh Manning. And I would say both schools in a relatively similar spot when it comes to resources. So who would you pick to win more games over the next 5 years?
I'll say Kansas State because they're starting out at a higher point. McGuire still in the middle of the build, so to speak. They both have a chance to, and I know it's kind of a bad thing that they have a chance to do this, but they both have really a chance to capitalize on the Big 12 realignment as well.
Yeah. It'll be interesting, the schedule and how that shakes out as well over the next couple of years with the realignment and the realigned conference. But I will take Kansas State, but I do think Texas Tech is on the upswing and think they're going to be better consistently under Joey McGuire.
Well, the tough part is, yes, maybe McGuire is a little bit behind this year, but I mean, what happens next year? You know, I mean, I say this not knowing the ins and outs of Texas Tech's roster and what losses they'll be taking, but we anticipate K-State taking a pretty big hit this coming year, this coming off season, right?
Yeah, but like building a culture and everything like that and having all the pieces in place, that's just further along, and that infrastructure still buys you a win or two every year. And maybe one that doesn't have that doesn't get that. But I do here, I'll put it this way. Going forward, and I know if the two teams are listening to this, they would have a reason to be invested in it because they hate each other at this point. It's Texas Tech and TCU. That's a really budding rivalry all of a sudden. I think Tech's in a better spot going forward.
I agree, because I think Joey McGuire is just far more dynamic than Sonny Dykes. So I totally agree with that. I guess with our question, I will just take K-State, but I feel like it's out of purely being a homer there. I mean, I think it's a pretty
kind of a push, but
yeah, I think it's a pretty even battle with both over the next 5 years. Okay, what's the better outcome for K-State on Saturday? An Iowa State win or a Kansas win?
Iowa State.
Yeah, Iowa State.
Because if Iowa State loses that, I think there's just a better chance of them responding to the next game when they play Kansas State, because they'll be pissed off, hungry, desperate for a win. They're at home, and it's better for Kansas State purposes to maybe get Iowa State having that hunger satisfied with the win at KU. I would take Iowa State -3 because I don't think Matt Campbell's going to have his team sleepwalking into Kansas. I think Kansas has their attention now, and they are hungry for a win.
My thinking is more, I think Iowa State's going to come in fired up for Kansas State no matter the result of the Kansas game. I think they're going to black out the stadium and where they're all blacks. Everyone wants to make those jokes. I'm sure that's what they're going to do with it being a night kick. It's going to be a hard place to win at night. I think they'll come in motivated no matter what, but my thought is just for the sake of kind of putting a halt to some of the hype around Kansas, I think it's better for Iowa State to win that game.
Hype around Kansas. I mean, it's not like Sports Illustrated had them in the Sugar Bowl this week or anything. So, maybe let's tone it down a little bit with that. I mean, I'm with you. The only resistance I would provide there is perhaps Iowa State, a program which has become accustomed to losing 5 games a year. If they lose a second game here in a row, there are some frustrations mounting. Specifically, if Deckers has a bad game against a not very good Kansas defense. I mean, do they have some quarterback questions there? And at the same time, those guys have been relentless in my mentions over one tweet about Matt Campbell in a sea of about 300 tweets that I sent out in the 24 hours after the Oklahoma game. So I'm not crazy about him right now, but I will say, yes, I would pull for Iowa State this weekend. Fortunate
for Iowa State fans, as Lance Leipold is probably a more attractive candidate than Matt Campbell now. So,
just judging by my Nebraska fan friend that I talk to most every day, he is much more in on Leipold than he is Matt Campbell right now. So, yeah, he's a hotter name all of a sudden.
John,
Weird, because I thought Matt Campbell was, I thought he was like, Newt Rockne combined with Bill Belichick, just like fused into one guy. So it's crazy to me that Lance Leipold has overtaken him already.
John, please tell me you're going to ask the sub-bullet question that you have as well beneath that.
I sure am. That's how we're going to finish off. The worst problem to have, would you rather have a leaky press box, which is what they have in Ames, or porta potties as public restrooms, which, of course, is what they have at Memorial Stadium in Lawrence? Worst problem to have.
I think a worst problem to have would probably be the porta potties in Lawrence, because that's more visual to the public. The public doesn't necessarily know what happens in the press box.
Exactly. DY got it. So porta potties, thousands of people see and are impacted. Nobody cares about us poor media hacks in the press box. I mean,
yes, but I feel like we almost had computers ruined the last time I was there.
Yeah,
that's true.
That was 2018, right? That was Snyder's last game.
Amazingly, that press box is still better than Penn State's.
Yeah.
Well, all I know is that there was water leaking in from the roof, and it put lots.
I thought it was a plumbing leak.
Lots of valuable electronics that were at peril there.
Yeah, well, I think it was a plumbing leak, John. I don't know that.
I just know it was coming down from the ceiling.
Well, that's a nice little 100 square foot press box they got there in Ames, like I said. So you can see it with a magnifying glass.
Yeah. Well, see, Cole, don't you want to go revisit the whole thing next week? Trying to work on Cole to get some tickets.
John's trying to get me to go to Ames, and that's just not good for me to be around them. But
every time we go to Ames, there's a freaking blizzard.
Well, I don't think we'll have to worry about that. But John and I might need to bring our boat in case there's some rain and everything, and wear our masks for the mold.
It's true. Lead pipe lock of the week. Lead pipe lock of the week time. Cole is 3-1. DY and I are 2-2. I'll start you off this week, because this time I think I have a pick that you guys actually agree with or think is smart. Okay. And that is UCLA plus 2.5 against Washington, getting 2.5 points against a Washington team that got a ton of shine for smashing Michigan State, but Michigan State now looks really bad. By the way, Scotty Hazelton, former K-State defensive coordinator, Michigan State fans not real happy with him right now. And UCLA's won 7 in a row. You guys realize that? Bruins have won 7 in a row. They're rolling. And listen, they will be playing in front of a raucous crowd at the Rose Bowl. Okay? If there's one thing we know, it will be totally insane at the Rose Bowl for this one.
I don't hate your UCLA pick, and I probably would have taken it any other week. But I faded Washington the last 3 weeks, and they've covered the last 3 weeks. So that's a stay away from me.
Yeah, John, can you imagine a Friday night primetime kick at the Rose Bowl? I mean, there's going to be at least 25,000 people there. So you stole my thunder. I was going to make.
You think 25K are going to be there?
Well, I don't know. Thought so, maybe. I don't know. So, anyways, I like that pick, John. In fact, that was one I was considering taking, but I'll take something else, and I'll take Kentucky plus 6.5 on the road at number 14, Ole Miss. I like it. I really like Kentucky. This and Mark Stoops, and they play so solid, home or away. I don't think they're impacted by road atmosphere. Plus, Ole Miss just snuck by Tulsa last week, 35-27. So I think Kentucky's the better team. I'll take the 6.5.
Okay, I'm going to do the helmet thing again.
Here we go.
Missouri plays Georgia this week. Georgia is a 28-point favorite. Missouri's not any good. They have the Luther Burden drama, I understand. And Georgia just kind of sleptwalked the entire game against Kent State. A lot of field goals. Just kidding. I'm sorry, Missouri. Georgia covers.
I was thrown off.
Minus 28, Georgia.
DY's pulling the Lee Corso.
So we just got Lee Corso'd by DY.
Next time when I drop an F-bomb, I've made the full transformation.
Yeah. How many helmets are we up to now that you've purchased?
Well, I have like 18 or 20 around there.
Okay. We should have some concerns.
I actually wanted Kentucky to be my lead pipe lock, and I chose not to because I don't have the Kentucky helmet.
Well, that's what I was going to say. For our listeners, I'm a little concerned DY's dictating his betting choice guidance to you just based off helmets and not what he truly feels is.
Well, I love that pick. I picked the one of the helmets I have.
Yeah.
If you guys want to know, I'm telling you, take this one to the bank too. UTSA 4.5 point favorite against Middle Tennessee. Middle Tennessee just destroyed Miami on the road last week. coming off the biggest win in school history, I think it's a wise idea to fade them, especially against a program that's been pretty good here lately with UTSA.
I agree with that. I also like Oklahoma -6.5 in a bounce back spot. I don't like TCU at all, so I like Oklahoma. And I know me and Cole both think Arkansas covers the 17.5 against Alabama.
Yeah.
We'll see. Okay. Prediction. What are you feeling for K-State and Tech?
I like Kansas State comfortably. I think they cover. This series usually has a lot of weird scores. So I think it'll be like 36-20. I think this will be higher scoring than people think. And if we're wearing the Power Cats, we don't lose.
That's what I was going to pitch it to, DY. I was going to say, is Old Glory appearing
Old
again?
Glory.
All right, just
I
like
love
before
the Old Glory. That is
No alternate helmet. We're wearing Old Glory. Kansas State 36-20.
Before the OU game, you made that pitch, and look, it worked. So we're going to stick with that until it doesn't work. I'm going to take Kansas State 31-20. I think they cover the spread like DY, and I think they force a couple of turnovers and mistakes by Texas Tech. So I think the defense is going to have a kind of a bounce back game here.
I still think it's a game that'll come down to the last possession. I think the defense makes a stop. K-State wins 27-20. Relatively close game, pretty competitive.
We all three think Texas Tech scores 20.
Oh yeah, we do. Yeah, we do.
Oh,
We should make a bet on that, like the exact point total for Texas Tech, and see if it hits.
Yeah. Is that a thing you can do? I don't know these apps well enough.
well, apparently you can push alternate lines out to 20.5. So I didn't know that. So.
Kansas State -15.5 this week, boys.
That's the DY line. That's the DY line. Okay. All right. Well, on that note, we will we'll mosey on out of here. There's your Texas Tech preview. Everybody make sure you focus up, have better focus than us. Only think about the Red Raiders this week. No more Oklahoma highlights. None of that, because we all know it's on you as the fan, and it's on us as the podcasters and us as the media to make sure that everybody's focus is dialed in the right place. In all seriousness, we appreciate the work of Jed Marshall, Tucker Franklin behind the scenes as always, helping produce this thing. For Derek Young and Cole Manbeck, I'm John Kurtz. Thanks for listening to 3 Mod. We'll talk to you soon.